Megalopolis is a film that you're either gonna love or hate with every fiber of your being. There's really no middle ground with this film. But regardless, you have to respect Francis Ford Coppola for having the guts to make a film like this, much less release it to the public. I think one thing's for certain, this is an insane asylum of a film.
We are taking our city back.
And when we ask these questions, when there's a dialogue about them, that basically is a utopia.
Megalopolis. Genius artist Caesar Catalina seeks to leap the city of New Rome into a utopian, idealistic future, while his opposition, Mayor Cicero, remains committed to a regressive status quo. So before I even get to the more bizarre aspects of the film, I just want to go over some things I did like about the movie that maybe everyone can kind of agree on, whether you liked it or hate the film. Firstly, I did like the performances. I think Adam Driver in this film was really good as Caesar. I think this is one example among many now that shows that Adam Driver is here to stay, and also shows that his artistic star power, not just star power, but artistic star power, right? He could be a new De Niro or something. But another performance that surprised me was actually Shia LaBeouf. I haven't seen him in a long time. I know he's had some trouble, but in this film, I thought he was really good as kind of an antagonist in the movie. He plays a really good degenerate hedonist. I also really did like the story. I mean, as far as like how the story is executed, that your mileage may vary, but the general plot I thought was really interesting. That America is a new Rome on the verge of civilizational collapse, but no one really realizes it yet. And I think there's an honest portrayal of that, where you do see like the high elite class who are very decadent, disconnected from reality, just partying all day, every day, incredibly rich. And then you have like the working class people who are just struggling to put a roof over their heads. And you can see how these elements, it kind of leads to something, right? To the collapse of society, which is preceded by moral collapse and economic collapse. I also really liked the dynamic between Adam Driver's character Caesar and the antagonist of the film, which is Mayor Cicero. Because you have Adam Driver's character Caesar, who is a young, fresh talent in the city who really wants the society to evolve, and he wants to build a new city. He has crazy ambitions and the same dreams as any young person, I guess, would. And then you have Cicero, right, he's older, who's like, no, I want the more time-tested traditions, even if it's not working right now exactly, because chasing progress at all costs, very risky. And I think, in this climate, this film easily could have villainized Cicero, but I think the movie does a really good job of, giving some humanity to the antagonist, right? We understand where he's coming from sincerely, and he has really good intentions. Flawed for sure, but good intentions nonetheless. And likewise for Adam Driver's character, right? He's not some overtly righteous, virtuous character that you're supposed to like and fall in love with. As a matter of fact, he's a very flawed character with a lot of moral failings, but I think this makes him all the more compelling. On top of that, I think this film had great art direction, from the costume design to the set design, everything else in the mise en scène that you would include in that category. Firstly, because I think this film, in the just world, would inspire a lot of future sci-fi films going forward. Kind of like what Blade Runner did, right? Blade Runner, when that film came out, it very much popularized the cyberpunk aesthetic, which inspired many more stories after that. I think Megalopolis, it's a very different type of sci-fi film aesthetically. There's nothing you haven't really seen like it in terms of just like, well, what does a future society look like? It's a very cool, unique feel to it that I think should inspire others. And on top of that, everything I just mentioned in the mise en scène plays a really big role in telling the story, showing character dynamics, what they're thinking in the scene momentarily. Now let's get on to why I think this film was a total fever dream. Because if I had to, really put it concisely, is that watching Megalopolis was like traveling back in time to like the 1910s and watching a silent film in the theater after being force-fed psychedelics. And that's what Megalopolis is. It's clearly Francis Ford Coppola making a modern-day silent film. Not so much in the literal sense of making a silent film, but just borrowing a lot of the visual vocabulary from silent films back in the day, right, where filmmaking was still like a wild frontier, where the possibilities were endless. And you can look at films like Metropolis, Napoleon, A Trip to the Moon, Intolerance, etc. There's probably many more, and it's clear that Francis Ford Coppola is pulling a lot from these films and trying to find inspiration in those pieces. And let's face it, if you had an average normal guy just sit down and watch any of those movies I mentioned, they're gonna hate it. They might lie to you and say that, oh, they really did like it, just to not come off as uncultured. But most people, I think, wouldn't like those silent films because you're getting a lot of bizarre cinematography, crazy editing, almost schizophrenic pacing at times with overly theatrical performances and blocking. They're not really accessible films, honestly. I love them, but for most people, they're not. And again, like everything I just said right there, that's what Megalopolis is. Insane, surreal imagery, and as well as crazy editing that clearly the story was taking a backseat in this movie. It's more so about, okay, well, what emotions did you get from seeing these images and how they were sequenced together versus, oh, that was really cool when the character did that or that happened. Because yeah, the story, the way it's executed, in terms of writing, yeah, it's very much all over the place. Things just sort of happen. There's elements in there that just kind of seem random, like Caesar's ability to stop time. It's really not an important part of the film at all. It does have that feel of like a film from the 1910s, for better or for worse. I loved it, but many people are not going to like that. And there were two scenes I'll give as an example where you have one scene where there's a character that's just totally stoned and drunk out of his mind. He's kind of having a breakdown, and then you have another scene where a character dies. Okay, it sounds pretty conventional, except that like for both scenes, you're getting these long sequences where nothing is happening narratively. You're just seeing a bunch of crazy imagery that like you can only conceive of in a dream, but yet Coppola brought those to life, which is I think very impressive, honestly. But nothing is happening, right? You're just kind of going along with the ride of this of these visuals just to see like, oh, what's it like if somebody's having a mental breakdown, or hey, what's it like when somebody dies and their life is flashing before their eyes. And for a lot of people, it's just gonna be like really confusing and style over substance, self-indulgent even. But for me, I was with it, man. I was enjoying every second of it because half the time I couldn't believe what I was looking at. I was like, why was this film allowed to be made? I'm so impressed. And then the other half, I think the visuals were doing its job as far as like making me feel a certain way. And that's why I love this film, because it's one of the most ballsiest creative films I have seen in my lifetime. Granted, I'm young, but in my lifetime, I have not seen such a crazier, nutty film than this. Uh, and for that alone, it demands my respect. But above that, everything else is executed well, in my opinion, at least. The images are both, I think, beautiful and amazing, but I think also motivated, even though I feel like people aren't really giving the film credit for that. And because of that, I want to give Megalopolis 5 stars out of 5. Love it or hate it, I think Megalopolis is actually trying to push the boundaries and limits of how can you tell a story within the film by going back to the silent film era and trying to get into that frontier mindset. You may not like it, your mileage may vary with that method, but I like it, especially in an age where it does seem like films are, sticking to conventions and formulas maybe a little bit too much, even though I enjoy most of those films.
We're in need of a great debate about the future.
There's still so much to accomplish, but is there time? Go.
So thanks for watching, guys. Let me know if you plan on saying Megalopolis, and if you loved it or you hate it. I doubt, there's many of you who feel like mixed about it. It's going to be one or the other. But regardless, let me know. Hit the like button, hit subscribe. I'll see you next time.